Welcome, bohemians and dreamers alike. What better musical to step into than the vibrant but struggling world of New York's East Village with Jonathan Larson's Pulitzer Prize winning rock opera, Rent? Rent is a rock musical with music, lyrics, and a book by Jonathan Larson. Now, it's loosely based on the 1896 opera La Boheme by Giacomo Puccini. It tells the story of a group of impoverished young artists struggling to survive and create a life in Lower Manhattan's East Village in the thriving days of the bohemian culture of Alphabet City under the shadow of the HIV/AIDS crisis. In 1988, playwright Billy Aronson wanted to create a musical based on Puccini's La Boheme, in which the luscious splendor of Puccini's world would be replaced with the coarseness and noise of modern New York. Well, in 1989, Jonathan Larson, a 29-year-old composer, began collaborating with Aronson on this project, and the two composed together Santa Fe, Splatter, which would later be reworked into the song Rent, and I Should Tell You. Well, Larson suggested setting the play amid poverty, homelessness, spunky gay life, drag queens, and punk in the East Village neighborhood of Manhattan, which happened to be down the street from his Greenwich Village apartment. He also came up with the show's ultimate title, a decision that Aronson was unhappy with at first, at least until Larson pointed out that rent also means torn apart. By 1991, Larson asked Aronson if he could use Aronson's original concept and make Rent his own. Well, Larson had ambitious expectations for Rent. His ultimate dream was to write a rock opera to bring musical theater to the MTV generation. Jonathan Larson focused on composing Rent in the early 1990s, waiting tables at the Moondance Diner to support himself. Well, if you're ever at 88 6th Avenue between Grand Street and Canal Street, the James Hotel now stands where the diner once stood, serving patrons for over 64 years. Well, over the next several years, Larson wrote hundreds of songs and made many drastic changes to the show, which in its final incarnation contained 42 songs. In the fall of 1992, Larson approached James Nicola, the artistic director of New York Theater Workshop, with a tape and a copy of Rent's script. When Rent had its first stage reading at New York Theater Workshop in March of 1993, starring Anthony Rapp and actress, dancer, and singer-songwriter Daphne Rubin Vega, it became evident that despite its very promising material and moving musical numbers, many structural problems needed to be fully addressed, including its cumbersome length and overly complex plot. However, the New York Times theater critic Ben Brantley called it an exhilarating landmark rock opera with a glittering, inventive score that shimmers with hope for the future of the American musical. Well, Rent is also somewhat an autobiographical work, as Larson incorporated many elements of his life into the show. Larson lived in New York for many years as a starving artist with an uncertain future. He sacrificed a life of stability for his art and shared many of the same hopes and fears as his characters. Like his characters, he endured poor living conditions, and some of these conditions, including an illegal wood burning stove, a bathtub in the middle of his kitchen, and even a broken buzzer, which means his guests had to call from the payphone across the street and he would throw down the keys, just as in Rent, made their way into the musical. A part of the motivation behind the storyline in which Maureen leaves Mark for a woman, also known as Joanne, is based on the fact that Larson's own girlfriend left him for a woman as well. The Mark Cohen character is based on Larson's friends, cinematographer and producer Jonathan Burkhart, and documentary filmmaker Eddie Rosenstein. Now, fun fact, many actual locations and events are included in or are the inspiration for elements of the musical. The Life Cafe, where the La Vie Boheme numbers are set, was an actual restaurant closed in 2013 on 10th Street and Avenue B in the East Village of New York City. The riot at the end of the first act is based on the actual East Village riot in 1988 that arose as a result of the city imposed curfew in Tompkins Square Park. Fun fact number two, Will I a song which takes place during a life support meeting and expresses the pain and fear of living a life with AIDS, was inspired by an actual real life event. Larson attended a meeting of Friends Indeed, an organization that helps people deal with the illness and grief, much like life support. Well, after that first time, Larson attended the meetings regularly. Well, during one meeting, a man stood up and said that he was not afraid of dying. He did say, however, that there was one thing of which he was afraid. Would he lose his dignity? Well, from this question stemmed the first line of the song. The people present at the life support meeting in the show, such as Gordon, Allie, and Pam, carry the names of Larson's friends who actually died in real life. In the Broadway show, the names of the characters in that particular scene, which they do introduce themselves, were changed nightly to honor the friends of the cast members who were living with or who had died from AIDS. Fun fact number three, the scene and song Life Support were also based on Friends Indeed, as well as on Gordon, Pam, and Allie. Originally, the members of Life Support had a solid block of the Forget Regret refrain, and they talked about remembering love. Well, when Jonathan's HIV positive friends heard this scene, they told him that having AIDS was not easy to accept. It made you angry and resentful too, and the song, unfortunately, did not match that. Well, Jonathan then added a part where Gordon says that he has a problem with this credo. My T cells are low. I regret that news. Okay? Paul, the leader of the meeting, replies, okay, but Gordon, how do you feel today? Well, Gordon admits that he is feeling the best that he has ever felt all year. Paul asks, then why choose fear? Gordon replies, I'm a New Yorker. Fear's my life. By January 24th of 1996, after the musical's final dress rehearsal before its off-Broadway opening, Larson had his first and only newspaper interview. Well, Larson would not live to see Rent's success. He died from an undiagnosed aortic dissection, believed to have resulted from Marfan syndrome, early the next morning. Friends and family gathered at the New York Theater Workshop, and the first preview of Rent became a sing-through of the musical in Larson's memory. Well, the show premiered as planned and quickly gained popularity, fueled by enthusiastic reviews and the recent death of its composer. It proved extremely successful during its off-Broadway run, selling out all of its shows at the 150-seat New York Theater Workshop. Now, due to such overwhelming popularity and a need for a larger theater, Rent did move to Broadway's then under renovation Nederlander Theater on 41st Street, opening in April of 1996, running for 5,123 performances, and starring Taye Diggs, Tony-winning actor Wilson Germain Heredia, actor, singer, and former NYPD detective Ed Green on Law and Order, Jesse L. Martin, the Queen of Broadway and former star of Wicked, Idina Menzel, actor, singer, musician Adam Pascal, Anthony Rapp and Daphne Rubin Vega reprising their roles from the New York Theater Workshop, and actress Freddie Walker. The musical became the seventh longest running Broadway show at the time, grossing over $280 million. And in September of 2008, the final show was filmed and screened in movie theaters as Rent, filmed live on Broadway, and then released on both DVD and Blu-ray in February of 2009. Rent would go on to win several awards, including the Pulitzer Prize and 4 Tony Awards. The critical reception of Rent was positive, not only for its acting and musical components, but also for its representation of HIV-positive individuals. And many critics praised the portrayal of characters such as Angel and Collins as being happy with positive outlooks on life, rather than being resigned to death. Billy Aronson wrote, I have come to love the show, and as tragic as it is that Jonathan, my writing partner, didn't live to see his work become a huge success, I believe he knew it would be. In our last conversation, I asked how the show was going, and he said, with complete assurance, that it was by far incredible. Well, in May of 1998, UK audiences were treated to the Seasons of Love when Rent opened its doors at the Shaftesbury Theatre, starring Olivier Award-winning actress Kristen Cummings and 4 original Broadway cast members. By 2005, Rent was adapted into its first full-length movie. remaining in the box office for top 10 for 3 weeks. Several plot elements were changed slightly, and some songs were changed to spoken dialogue or cut entirely for the film. Well, the entire Broadway cast actually reprised their roles for the film, with the exception of Daphne Rubin Vega, who was pregnant at the time of filming, and Freddie Walker, who felt that she was just too old for her role. On April 24th of 2006, the original Broadway cast were reunited for a one-night performance of the musical at the Nederlander Theater. This performance raised over $2 million for the Jonathan Larson Performing Arts Foundation, Friends Indeed, and New York Theater Workshop. Former cast members were invited, and many from prior tours and former Broadway casts appeared, performing an alternate version of Seasons of Love as the finale of the performance. In October 2007, a heavily revised production titled Rent Remixed opened at the Duke of York's Theatre in London's West End. The cast starred Welsh stage actor Oliver Thornton, another Welsh stage actor Luke Evans, British soap actor Leon Lopez, musical theater actress Francesca Jackson, British actress, singer, and dancer Denise Van Outen, and English soap actress Jessie Wallace. The production was also revived off Broadway in July of 2011 at New World Stages. Almost the entire show was different from the original, yet the reinvention did not please the critics, who complained that the new actors did not have a feel for their characters they were playing and that it made the show actually feel very contrived. Now, fun fact number 4. Rent, if you did not know, had an interesting following of fans who referred to themselves as rent heads. The name originally referred to people who would camp out at the Nederlander Theater for hours in advance for the discounted $20 rush tickets to each show. These discounted tickets were for seats in the first 2 rows of the theater, reserved for sale by lottery 2 hours prior to each show. Well, since then, other Broadway shows have followed Rent's example and now also offer cheaper tickets in efforts to make Broadway theater accessible to people who would otherwise be unable to afford the ticket prices. Now, by January of 2019, the Seasons of Love reached television in their first ever live television production by Fox. The cast starred Grease Live's Jordan Fisher, Pretty Woman the Musical's Brennan Hunt, singer-songwriter Tinashe, Tony nominee Brandon Victor Dixon, American drag performer Valentina, High School Musical's Vanessa Hudgens, Neighbors 2 actress Kiersey Clemons, and R&B singer Mario. Now, while the filmed version was billed as a live to the public performance, Brennan Hunt, who played Roger, actually broke his foot before the final act, and the network was forced to air an earlier dress rehearsal of Act 2. Folks, Rent reminds us that even in the face of hardship, there is beauty in connection, hope in the face of despair, and the power to celebrate life's precious moments, no matter how fleeting. Remember, there's no day but today to express your love, fight for your dreams, and celebrate the vibrant tapestry of life. Measure your life in love.